Hey everyone, welcome. Today we are bringing you always on powering AI with real time first party data. I am Saf Ketan, product marketing and strategy at Tealium. And with me, I have Aryan. Aryan, can you introduce yourself?
Yep, nice to meet all of you. Thanks for joining. My name is Arjen van der Broek. I work at Pega and I'm a principal product manager for the Customer Decision Hub product.
And by the way, guys, we're going to show you what that means because it's an awesome product. Right? I love it. So we decided to do this session because there's a lot going on in AI, right? And we wanted to unpack what's happening today in AI and marketing and customer experience. And honestly, I don't think I've ever seen a technology like this that promised both top and bottom line growth. And it's a big reason why CEOs have across the world absorbed this into their strategic plans, and it's a priority literally for every customer we're talking to. And with that is coming very inflated expectations and hype. And now 2 years after ChatGPT came out, we want to see where we are at, what's working, what's not working. So today, while we show you some slides, it is really a discussion. And what makes the discussion work is questions. So if you guys have questions as we present, please pop them into the chat and we will take them as they fit into this narrative. Okay. So 3 chapters today for you guys, talking about what's happening now, what are we seeing, and then going into some use cases and talking about why we're doing what we're doing, and then ending with where we think we're headed. So where are we going? Okay. So we're going to talk about those with the lens of what could you be doing better and why people are struggling, if they're struggling, and what people are finding success and how they're finding success. So with that, I want to start with the first chapter, what we're seeing. Aryan, I want to start with you. What do you think your customers are expecting from you? What are you seeing right now at Pega? How would you describe what we have going on today?
Yeah, of course, we're all in a very dynamic, dynamic era with the rise of Gen AI. Before I go there and talk about AI in general, I'd like to give a little bit of an overview of what Customer Decision Hub does, Pega Customer Decision Hub. It's one of a few products within the Pega portfolio. We call it real-time decisioning, sometimes called real-time interaction management. And what we do, we define for our large customers, typically enterprise customers in telco and banking and healthcare, insurance, for example, is that we use AI. Nowadays, you would almost call it traditional AI. So predictive and analytical, as well as adaptive AI, to engage with customers at the right time with the right message. And that message is not always trying to sell something. It can also be informational, or it can be a service-based message. So that is what our product specifically does, and we're a leader in that quadrant in terms of analyst reports, 6 times running. So what we do is in real time, we decide what is the best engagement for that customer. So think about, for example, a customer who's on a website and they are navigating, they're browsing, and they're clicking on home loans, for example, right? We want to capture that data and know what this customer is interested in. And we feed that, for example, with Tealium directly into our system. And then using our propensity, predictive analytics, and adaptive analytics, we then decide, hey, this is the right engagement for that person. And of course, we have to be super fast. We do this in less than 200 milliseconds. That's the SLA we have with our customers, to then engage with the right message. And that's independent of the channel. So suppose somebody first calls a call center and then afterwards logs onto their banking website, you have to be relevant, but also stay on top of that same message, unless the behavior changes, of course. And that's why we do that real-time learning and real-time adaptive decisioning as well. So that is in a nutshell what we're doing. And what we're seeing now is, of course, with the rise of Gen AI, how does that correlate with that more traditional AI approach, which doesn't go away. And actually, I think it even strengthens what we already do. And as such, our CEO had a good metaphor with the left and the right brain. I'll share with you what that looks like, just to put it a little bit in perspective.
Yeah, I love this.
Yeah, so it's a pretty simple slide, but if you think about it, on the left-hand side is what our product does really, really well, right? It does predictive, adaptive analytics, decisioning in real time, and looking at propensity scores, predictive scores, performance for a customer. What should we promote to that customer? Now with Gen AI, we can look at that right side of the brain, which is much more the creative part. right? We can also then generate the content that is relevant at that moment. Think about a subject line or a script for a call center representative to go through, the right imagery, the right message for that person at that time. So those two go hand in hand, left brain and right brain. And we see many of our customers tend to move towards new use cases on the right with generative, but the left strengthens that. And that traditional AI should not be forgotten. And together with Gen AI makes fantastic use cases. That's what we see coming up these days.
I love this slide so much. So, one of the things I always noticed in my history as a personalization or a targeting person, that there was always this tension between technology and creativity, or data and content, or strategy and creativity, because you could do maybe one or two or three audiences really well, and then you couldn't scale because it was just cost prohibitive. It was always that you would hit that scale barrier really quickly. And I feel Gen AI is giving us this opportunity to break that barrier, to unlock it. And then, on, like you say, traditional AI, I in fact feel that's probably the majority of AI out there. Gen AI gets all the buzz for sure, but traditional AI is more necessary, I think, for all the behind the scenes calculations and decisioning. So I love where this is going, and I love that metaphor. Well, it reminds me of a quote that we use: "Humans sell, but bots scale." And that's the, I think, my favorite thing about AI right now is the human element. So for anybody who's playing with Gen AI, if you think about the prompts and then the fine tuning of the prompt, that is the human input. And honestly, that's what makes the output shine. And it's the same thing with AI right now, is the input data that you give to your AI, whether it's Gen AI or traditional AI, it's all about context. It's all about how are you making it relevant, and it's all about how are you just unlocking that moment that Aryan talked about, whether it's the right channel. You got to make it relevant for the user, right? So I love what you just showed, Aryan. So yeah, keep going. I know you guys talked about so many types of AI. I hope people noticed that on that slide, right? You saw like 9 or 10 bubbles, and they were all different types of models. And that's, everybody forgets just how complex the world of AI is. Everybody thinks it's one thing, but it's not one thing.
Yeah, no, totally. And I like that. I like that snippet as well, about the scaling factor. That's super important because we still have that SLA that we have to adhere to. If somebody is on a website, you can't show anything like a blank spot. You need to be in the moment. You could have a default offer, but that's irrelevant to a customer. You need to engage. So what we're seeing is that a lot of our customers are looking at use cases. How do we make this tangible, the whole AI, Gen AI particular components? And I have a couple of examples here. And they're not necessarily only for the Customer Decision Hub product that I work on, but also Pega wide. And what I love about the company I work for is that we are looking at this from a really pragmatic use case. What is the output we want to achieve? How do we make life for our customers better and easier? For example, how do we improve margin or time to market? We're looking at very specific use cases. And some of these technologies that you see here on this slide, all new Gen AI capabilities, still many of them work with that traditional AI capability, but they make it very tangible. And so, of course, you can think about content generation, as we see here at the bottom, where we use Gialdini's principles of persuasion, like authority or time or criticality. There's a couple that we apply, and then we can, for example, say, hey, you need to write a better headline for me, or the subject of the message that we want to send, for example, for an email. And we can also do so with the images that we have. We can generate them on the spot. And that, of course, is that scaling factor that's super important with Gen AI. Another one that I'm a real big fan of, and people can try this out, is called Pega Blueprint. And that is really about ideation. It's a team of people that work together, for example, on an operational workflow. They want to know, how can we best sketch this, right? And it's kind of a prototyping tool that leads from ID to realization. And I try to apply this to what you and us are doing together, Tealium and Pega. So what I did here is I created a workflow based on an integration between Tealium and Pega. So basically, I told the application context, Gen AI, this is what I want you to do. I want to define a workflow for customer service complaints data. And Tealium needs to listen to the data coming in, Pega needs to consume that data, and then we need to engage. So that's the whole workflow. And here you see just one of those workflows that has been generated. It cost me like 20 minutes to create this. It's super useful, super fast, and also very interactive and iterative. And this is just one of many stages that I created. I can also say, well, these are my personas. These are the people that will be working on this technical integration between these two software solutions. And I deliberately chose this use case because for me, it's a real-time use case that we always stumble upon. And how can I make this better with my team? Who's working on this? What is needed to get this done? So Blueprint is very, very useful. And it's a great example of how Gen AI can be applied for our customers.
Yeah, I hope everybody's picking up just how many different variations of AI we are talking about in this conversation already. And each of these need different types of data. Each of these need have a different benefit. They work in a different way and they show up in different parts of the journey. So that's kind of what we wanted to help everybody connect with today is the expectation has been that when chat gpt came, you just write a prompt and you get a perfect output, is so not true, right? It might work in very narrow situations, but the more applications you start looking at for AI, the more your data becomes relevant, the more your technology becomes relevant, your strategy, where you want to use it, how you want to use it, all those things start to become available. One of the things that I've heard so many times, if today, right now, all the businesses across the world had access to resources and AI models and compute technology, they would still not be able to be successful because not everybody has first party data ready to go. And that dependency is what I think has been underestimated or undervalued. And that's what's coming out, that all the stuff that we were saying was necessary for traditional AI has not been solved by Gen AI. Gen AI is an add-on and it's solving other problems, but you still need to do the basics, right, to do the AI. So that's really what we wanted to highlight in this first chapter is the expectations of AI are reasonable and probably going to come to bear, but the hype is the timing that everybody is trying to expect, and the ease of use that people are expecting. That's, I think, where the hype is. It is the results are real, but you got to work for it, right? And that's what we want to show you. So let's move to our next chapter, right? Why we are doing what we're doing, and how people are finding success. So Aryan, you've talked about your CDH, your propensity, and all your other models. Can we look into some use cases maybe and some examples of how people are finding success with Pega?
Yeah, for sure. And I'd like to basically give a small intro on this topic as well, the way we look at this, and also my personal point of view. I mean, I've been working in this space for about 20 years. Initially, very heavily focused on customer relationship management, and in the past 15 years or so in digital marketing and digital engagement. And you mentioned it before, Sav, the key element here is data, and it's a no-brainer. Everybody knows that without good data, you can't do much. But it is what we also notice that many of our customers that want to embark on new AI/Gen AI projects are also looking at their data structures and their data cleanliness and what type of data do they really hold. And of course, that's where you see a lot of investment these days in data lakes, data warehouses, Google, Snowflake, Databricks, Redshift, you name them. There's a lot of dynamic stuff happening in that market, and really, really interesting from a digital marketing perspective, of course. And the other part there is CDPs, customer data platforms. And that's why we partner with the likes of Tealium to get that data into CDAs. We rely completely on that behavioral data. Typically, we can get the customer profiles and that type of data. We can get that from any source. It could be in a data warehouse, and we refresh that very frequently. But that real-time behavioral data, that's where we rely on the likes of Tealium. And so data is key, and real-time data is master almost, right? We need that in order to basically operate in real time in the channel with the right engagement. And so the way we've done this with Tealium, and I'll show another slide, is that one of my teams has built connectors into Tealium, into several Tealium solutions, to get that data into Pega Customer Decision Hub. And so think about behavioral events, like that use case I mentioned. Somebody's on a website, is interested in loan for home improvement, for example, we need to have that data in real time so we can engage with that customer when they call the call center or are on a website or are on an app, wherever they are. We need to know that type of stuff, and we need to be able to aggregate that. We need to be able to decision on that in real time with our models, because it can change the predictions that we had about that customer. And in what we call adaptive mode, we constantly update those learnings in real time again, based on those data points from Tealium in this case. So that is one of my favorite use cases to get that data and engage with the customer. The second one is called sometimes segment membership or audience membership, right? So it's basically customer traits. These customers show interest in this particular subscription or product or what have you. And that flows into us. So we can also use that for engagement as well. That's the second connector we have. And another one where we rely on the likes of Tealium is, for example, for unknown and known. And that is, of course, hugely important. If I know that Arjen, I was on a website an hour ago, but I wasn't logged in, and then an hour later I log on, then I do want to know what happened when this person was anonymously browsing that website. And that sort of data and the matching, the resolution of the identity comes from Tealium. We feed that into Pega, and we know the unknown interaction history, what happened an hour ago, versus what happens now, and combine that again for engagement. So very tactical and pragmatic use cases, all based on data and all based on data coming in from Tealium.
Yeah, as you were talking about this, what I was thinking about is it's so easy to think that AI will solve all my problems, but the real success of AI always comes in a very focused, very laser focused, targeted use case. But the reality is the context you got to give that AI is broad. So this is, I think, where also there's a little bit of confusion, that your data layer needs to be broad and comprehensive, because like you said, I could be calling the call center or I could be coming to the website, and in both cases you want to give my whole history to that AI model to be able to give the right output. But the application of that output is actually very targeted, very specific, and it's a really beautiful challenge that I think people are finally starting to embrace, that your data strategy needs to be very expansive, but your AI strategy needs to be very focused and very narrow. And that's how you find success. Like all those models you've shown, they all do one thing really, really well. But it's hard to find a model that'll do all those things really well. That's just not going to happen for a while.
Yeah, no, totally. And then, of course, if you have the luxury, and I think that customers should make funds available for that and budget available for that, is also to experiment.
Yes.
There are so many brains in a company that can come up with creative solutions to problems they see today for their customers or internally or both, that they then can come up with and experiment around. And maybe you set a deadline, you've got a week to do this, to experiment, almost like in a hackathon style. Bring those basically Gen AI use cases to fruition, do something with it, and look at the output that you wanted to have. Of course, you have to put boundaries around it, but that experimentation is crucial. And that's what we do as well. Some of these Gen AI use cases don't make the cut, but the other ones where we see a real improvement for our customers, those are the ones we invest in.
It's such a big reason why all the Gen AI products usually have the thumbs up, thumbs down. It really helps the AI learn. Like I know at Tealium, we're using a couple of AI products now, and every time we're investing time in doing the thumbs up, it's just the output's getting better and better and better. And I think that's another area where our customers are starting to embrace just the effort that's required. Is you have to tune these models. That's when you'll get the real ideal results. So do you have a couple of specific examples or use cases we can look at, maybe some stats?
Yeah, I mean, let me just highlight this one once again, because this is the most prominent one that we see being used by our customers. It's of course because Gen AI speaks to the imagination when it comes to the gen part, right? I can generate something. People are like, hey, it wrote a particular poem for me, or it wrote a novel, or it helped me with my resume, anything you can think of. And of course, that in marketing is essential. And specifically when it comes to creating like content that I spoke about before, recommend better actions, treatments, as we call them, right? That content with the subject line, etc. Those are some of the things that, of course, are available in our product and are already heavily used by our customers. Another one that comes up quite a bit is and this has been available for a few releases now, is bias checking, right? When you are engaging with your customers, you want to make sure that the distribution of who you engage with is not skewed. And that's where we use the Gini coefficient to look at, hey, is this really, taking into account my diverse audience that I have? And if it isn't, then I have to change my algorithm and I have to change my business logic for that. So those are two strong use cases. I think that back to the data point itself, I know I'm jumping a little bit back and forth, Saf, but I'm excited about this part because this is back to the left part of the brain that is more the traditional AI, where we work with Tealium. So the generation comes after understanding your customer, in my mind. And so this is what we do with Tealium. We connect to Tealium, we consume the data in what we call our customer profile designer, right? Where we have the aggregates of the behavior, the customer profile updates, etc. And in the moment, we then use AI to arbitrate what is the best message for that customer. And finally, of course, we activate that engagement. We engage less than 200 milliseconds in the channel. So I wanted to reiterate on that because I think the left brain, right brain should be top of mind at all times. Gen AI does not live in a silo. It works together with the left brain.
Yeah, and you just talked about 200 milliseconds. I wanted to just take a minute on that. I've read articles where I've seen partners talk about real time as up to 15 minutes. But if you look at any study about customer experience, even if your website takes 30, 40 seconds to load, people leave the page, right? The amount of page abandonment when the load time is high is astronomical, especially after website performance has gotten so good. So in our mind, and of course this has been our ethos from the beginning, but real time is 200 milliseconds or around there, so that you can immediately in session give somebody the right relevant context. And now I've heard a lot of people say it's a luxury or a nice to have and you don't read true real time. But the fact is, you guys are showing that AI models can work in real time, that you can get outputs in real time and then act on that. And so when you can do all of those things immediately in the session, now I know I can target each person the right way at the right time. And it's becoming, I think AI is making it more critical. And in fact, I feel brands that are not prioritizing that, or depending on their business model, I do think we'll see a disadvantage against the competitor. So I think with way AI is going now, I feel real time has become non-negotiable.
Yeah, and back to your earlier question around that, so some tangible numbers. We engaged with Forrester to have a total economic impact report on our solution, and look at those metrics. So interviews with many different customers, and what do they see in terms of ROI, in terms of increasing their margin, their top line, etc. And we've seen use cases well over 400% revenue generation, ROI, on top of what they already did. A payback of the license investment within a matter of 6 months.
Wow.
And I think, so this is not a sales pitch or anything, but I think that it's actually pretty clear why this happens, because many large companies can't do this just yet, or don't have the right solutions in place, or simply not set up to success. But with our solution, you are, and it's purely because you engage with the right message to a customer. And I think it's also crucial to think that it's not always sales driven. You don't want to push products to customers. You want to push the right message to a customer. And it may sound like a cliche, but engaging with empathy is hugely important, right? There's use cases of insurers that had in mind to sell a particular new insurance to customers. They found there was a hurricane, very relevant right now. You want to stop those campaigns. You don't want to push those messages. You want to be able to service those customers. And that is in the moment, based on external factors, engaging with the right message excuse me, to those customers. And again, that's where data plays a crucial role. Again, the behavioral data, for example, from Tealium flowing in.
Yeah, I feel I grew up in the world of auto marketing, and typical auto purchase life cycle is about 4 months. And if somebody's in research mode in the first month and you start showing them offers, they're just going to ignore, and it's going to ruin the experience. So it is so important to understand where somebody is in their mindset and their journey, and I think AI is unlocking that quite a bit. And the point you made about ethics and just checking the value or the efficacy of the model, I think it's just like data privacy is to data. I think ethics is to AI, right? Like you cannot go down this road without taking that seriously, because the model is doing so many calculations and decisions. If it goes off track, then it just keeps going off track. And I know in regulated industries, that's one of the reasons they're being careful as they adopt AI. I know in EU, all our EU customers, they already have an AI act or in a law that requires ethical AI explanation, transparency, all these things. So I know that's another reason why partners become so important in this world of AI. Not only is the model something that's a very heavy lift if you want to do it on your own, but on top of that, having this some sort of framework for ethics and transparency, explainability, all these things become quite necessary as you go down this road. So I'm very happy that there's so many partners out there now that enable this. And we've been doing next best action with you guys right from the start, and I feel it's much more attainable and accessible now than it ever was before, for sure.
Yeah, and to your point about data privacy regulations, we're on top of that. We actually collaborate in certain regions about these laws as well, have our influence on them, and adhere to them, of course. Because I always try to put myself in the shoes of a consumer, I want to know that my data is safe there. And also I want to know that it's used in a way that is practical and useful for me. There's a certain way I'd like to be talked to. I don't want to be, I'm a customer, right? So engage with me in the way that I like you to engage with me, but also make sure that if I have data that I think you should eradicate, erase, delete, whatever, I should have that right.
Yeah.
And so in a way, I think many of these specifically EU laws that are also basically replicated in other regions of the world are hugely important, because again, it puts the customer first.
Yeah, I hope more and more businesses are taking real stock of just the importance of being responsible with data, because at the end of the day, while we are marketers and technologists, we're all consumers on the other side, and we all have families. And I can tell you, once I had my daughter, my focus about personal data changed quite a bit. And now I'm really happy that all these technologies are showing up. And when you think about the scale that AI will unlock, you have to take the data privacy and regulation seriously. I don't think there's a way around that.
Agreed.
So okay, we're getting close to our final chapter. So let's talk about where you think we're going, right? What do you see coming? What are you excited about? What recommendations do you have for our listeners? Like, what should they be doing?
Yeah, exciting topic, of course. I can't predict the future, but throughout my career, I think, and together with me, many of my very, very smart colleagues, focus is always looking at pragmatic use cases. What can we do to make our customers more successful? And it can be improving their margin. It can be, I don't know, faster time to market, right? Those are top of mind. Being able to experiment more, be more creative, find their own brand voice. All these things are possible with Gen AI. So we are typically looking at these, again, very pragmatically. How can we help? What can we do to improve those returns and better use cases? But always with the left brain, right brain top of mind, for lack of a better term, a fusion of AI, right? Predictive, adaptive, propensity scoring, real-time data, and next to that, generating the right content, the right treatment, the right message for those customers. So that is something that we absolutely see happening. Again, I want to reiterate the Pega blueprint. The whole prototyping approach, people coming together very, very fast, coming to a new type of workflow that sometimes took months to generate, to create, which you can now do in a matter of a day if you work with an entire team. My workflow that I created, that I shared earlier, was a 20-minute exercise. Of course, you have to go through iterations with your team. But I think those are fantastic new ways of thinking about how to do your business. Let me share this with you. These are a couple of examples of what we're currently looking at, and some of that is already available. But we're looking at what we sometimes call the autonomous enterprise. I always think that humans play a crucial factor. Whatever Gen AI and AI can do, a human is a crucial factor in this whole ecosystem, if you will, between man and machine. But self-optimizing strategies, as we call it, right? I know that a particular engagement has worked for a customer. Well, why was that the case? With AI, I can analyze that, but I can also apply that to people similar to me, or to similar to people that converted or were happy with the engagement or said, yes, this was good support from a customer rep, that sort of stuff. So what we're doing, we have a solution, for example, in CDH called Value Finder. It looks at undervalued groups of customers where we can say, well, actually, why don't you blah? And that why don't you, that is where Gen AI comes in. It analyzes all those data points and then basically helps you finding, yeah, that needle in a haystack, where you say, listen, you're forgetting about this group of people. You should think about setting this particular engagement when they're next online, or when they have a certain behavior. Think about that. And so at the bottom here, you can also see what we call automated insights and generated recommendations, where we say, for these people, why don't you do this? And that sort of iterative approach between man and machine, again, hugely, hugely helpful. In the past, you maybe had to do reporting, look at it, BI, analytics, etc. We do this in the moment right now. I can always see why I'm doing what I'm doing and where I'm missing certain things, where it can be better. And that's where Gen AI plays a crucial role. And that's leading towards what we call the autonomous enterprise.
Yeah, I feel like I hope the audience is getting inspired by just seeing how many things AI is unlocking. This is where the promise of AI is not inflated. I don't think there is a lot of reality in what we are hearing about what AI can do. I think if we take it seriously, we are going to get there, and we're gonna be able to unlock. So we are coming up at time. Let me see if the question. So we have one question from the audience. If there was one thing that you could tell somebody that they have to do right now for AI, what would you say?
Yeah, I think the logical parts, and we kind of mentioned this already. Look at your data. Make sure your data is ready for the use cases you want to present to your customers. And if it isn't, make that a priority, right? Get the right first party data. Make sure you have the behavioral data. It's all crucial, especially in our type of business. In terms of Gen AI, think about the output. What is it you want to achieve? Why are you doing what you're doing? It's fun to generate new videos, etc. But why are you doing this? Are you trying to improve your brand voice? Or are you trying to change the vision of a company towards your end consumers? Think about what it is you want to achieve. So think about the data, think about the use case and the output of the use case. And then lastly, experiment. Try and make sure that those use cases you have in mind with the group of dedicated people, that you try and experiment and look at the output and tune and iterate. And even AI can help with that, right? Why was this the right thing to do? So I think it's a pretty, like I said before, a pragmatic approach to experimenting and looking at the output and improving constantly.
I love it. I love it. Thank you. Okay, let me recap some of the takeaways from today for everybody. Right. So AI is not one thing. There's a lot of different types of AI, and there's the predictive and adaptive, which is the left brain, and the creative and the generative, which is the right brain, and they're really coming together now. And you kind of need to understand both. It has a lot of potential and promise, but it's still early days. I know we've been doing it for 80 years, but we still have a long way to go. And yes, a lot of stuff is coming true, but a lot more is going to happen. In session customer facing AI is possible today, but it requires consented real time data architecture. You cannot ignore that. You have to, that is where you will unlock your real success. And it's not plug and play yet. I think maybe it'll happen. AI cannot exist without ethics in AI. So you got to think about bias and explainability and transparency and all those things. It is the cost of doing business with AI. You have to take it seriously. And the most important thing, you got to start experimenting now. I'll end with a quote that I love, right? We've heard a lot that AI is going to take our jobs. I don't know if that's true. I don't know if that'll happen. But I can tell you that somebody using AI will probably take my job if I don't take that seriously, right? So that I do believe is happening. So I think for all the listeners, if you guys are struggling with AI, it's because it's hard. It's not automatic. If you are investing in it, then make sure you're investing in your data just as much as you're investing in the AI. And like Aryan said, understand why you're doing each of the applications, because otherwise the AI has no limits. It can just go crazy. So if you narrow it down, I think it works. So yeah, that's all I got for you guys today. Aryan, you've been amazing. Thank you.
Thank you, Seth, for having me.
And everybody, reach out to us on LinkedIn. Find us where you need. I'm Saf from Tealium. This is Aryan from Pega. And you guys have been awesome. Thank you so much.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.